The Paper Mario franchise has always been unafraid to tackle mature topics you'd never expect from Nintendo's key mascot. The N64 original has our hero accused of murder. The second game features a gallows in the center of the hub world, and the goal of Super Paper Mario's villain is the total obliteration of all life, including his own, by means of a world-eating pan-dimensional genocide. While no other Mario game, paper or otherwise, goes quite that far, Color Splash continued the existential terror by introducing paint as synonymous to lifeblood, which was being sucked away by the antagonists through a straw. If that last one sounded like a horror film, that's because it was likely intended to be a parody of one, as is the case with the Origami King. Before we get to that though, let's talk about how this came to be. It is finally time to cover Paper Mario's Sticker Star for Dark Aspects. I'm not going to be too harsh on the game because that's been done to death and it isn't the point of this video, but I did want to quickly explain why I'm personally not a fan. Long story short, it disappointed me, especially as a follow-up to Super Paper Mario, which had the wildest story in any Mario game ever. We went from that to a plot even thinner than the N64 original, and doesn't play with perspectives or offer interesting sub-stories set in each chapter to make up for it. With a de-emphasis on storytelling, are there even enough dark aspects to talk about here? Or am I better off trying to squeeze water from a stone cap? Join me on this journey of re-examining a game I've only played once to completion. And who knows, maybe I'll find something more to appreciate about Sticker Star along the way. The game opens with the classic while slowly zooming into a book, where the narration fills us in about a holiday called Sticker Fest, an annual celebration of stickers in the Mushroom Kingdom. Apparently, a wish-granting comet routinely falls on the special night, so every Toad, plus Mario, gathers around in hopes that their own wishes will be heard. That's kind of weird since the N64 game established a ton of lore about everyone's wishes being handled by these star spirits, and that they come true so long as they aren't selfish in nature, like Bowser's desire to defeat Mario or make Peach like him. Could the Sticker Comet have originated from Star Haven? I like this idea of the comet being able to grant wishes the star spirits refuse. Just like the Star Rod, it makes sense why Bowser would be after a similar wishing device. This is just me trying to link the games which do share some very light connections already, like references to previous partner characters, but I still am of the mindset that Sticker Star is more of a reboot than a true sequel to any of these games, because this one began its own set of recurring themes and elements for the next two adventures that ignore what came before it. For more on that, I recommend checking out my Paper Mario's Fandom Explained with a Broken Family analogy video. Whatever the case may be, I think the Sticker Comet likes the attention, because rather than simply pass by, it touches down and takes center stage to glow handsomely, not caring about the evil Koopa King trying so desperately to steal it. I'm not sure why, but Mario just kinda stares meanly from the crowd and then stands there stunned, while three Toads make an admirable effort to slow down the enemy who's bigger than all of them combined. It ultimately doesn't work, and Bowser lunges towards the comet, shattering it into 6 pieces Mario has to retrieve because there always has to be something to collect. A Burger King crown then floats down from the heavens to rest on Bowser's cranium, which gives his papery skin a sick holographic sheen, acting as armor, and causes his eyes to glow yellow. The transformation is a bit creepy because he looks up into the sky with a vacant expression while cycling back and forth between his normal form and this flashy glow-up, before the latter takes over completely. The screen fades out to white, then back into a horribly crumpled up Mario. This must be incredibly painful for a paper person, but a voice rudely yells at him to quickly get up and help her. The voice belongs to Kirsty, an anagram of Sticker, who's an impatient alien fairy who came riding in on the now broken comet she holds Mario accountable for. According to Kirsty, the comet was packed full of people's wishes, carrying both the royal ones and Kirsty herself, who hail from the faraway Sticker Star. Her destiny is to look after these royal stickers. Okay, so never mind about the comet coming from Star Haven, I guess. Unless this Sticker Star is in Star Haven or close to it, but maybe that's a stretch. Anyway, these royal stickers bestow great power, but like most magical artifacts of this type, it comes at a cost. Similar to the Master Crown of the Kirby franchise, Donning one of these sparkly headpieces begins to corrupt its wearer. Mega Sparkle Goomba, Tower Power Pokey, Gooper Blooper, Mr. Blizzard, Petey Piranha, and Bowser are all victims to this fate. A large group of 16 Goombas happened to cross one when it fluttered down to their fortress, though they claim it was entrusted to them specifically by Bowser. One of these grunts picked it up and put it on, which turned them all into crazy babbling loons, Kirsty's words, not mine, saying things like, "Shine ya! Shee-hee-hee, and shine diddly-doo." I'm surprised the crown didn't cause the lowly Goomba's head to explode, but I suppose any Joe Schmo can tap into its power. The Mega Sparkle namesake comes from the Peasant King's ability to merge with its gang of Goombas into a perfect 4x4 square of glittery glory that can be perfectly weakened with scissors. After their defeat, the Goomba in charge orders its fellow Sparkly Shiner-Rooskies to combine once more into a sticky wall, but one of its followers confesses that he'd like to go back to being a normal dude, as he and the other lackeys are growing tired of the crown's power warping their minds and bodies, not taking kindly to the non-consent. Like the stack of Shy Guys harassing an individual one in Color Splash, the single crown-bearing Goomba tries to best Mario himself, but is pathetically decimated by any additional attack. The Tower Power Pokey of Drybake Stadium speaks in Shine Babble, just like Mega Sparkle Goomba, but there sadly isn't any banter between Kirsty and the boss this time. The Pokey's story is different from the Goomba's, in that rather than seemingly coming across a crown by accident and choosing to put it on, Kamek himself placed one atop its head, and proceeded to hide the foe inside of a tower folded with dark magic, all to slow Mario's progress. The Goomba majority eventually decided that the crown's power just wasn't for them, but this Pokey here had no choice, and was crammed into a dark box until it was time for him to shine as a soldier. The next end of chapter boss fight against Gooper Blooper is actually really cool. It's a big purpley poisonous squid with a rad music track progressively adding more instruments he attacks to the beat of. So if you're good at keeping rhythm, you'll have an easier time defending against his assault. It's neat because this mechanic of blocking to the beat shows up again in Color Splash for the showdown with Wendy O. Koopa, who also notably guards a coveted purple treasure. All Gooper Blooper wants from life is to dance, so he didn't ask for the power of the crown when it fell from the sky and landed on him either. Poison inadvertently began flowing from his grooven body, which affected both the ocean and the forest where Wiggler calls home. So far, the way these mini backstories have been handled haven't been terribly interesting, but I think it really works for the World 4 baddie, Mr. Blizzard. He's a spinning snowman who began melting when springtime came, and almost perished in the heat due to his frail body he laments having. But when a crown took the place of his bucket hat, a wish for a body that can't melt, and presumably an endless winter too, was able to keep him alive. You can't help but feel sorry for him after blasting the poor guy with a heater, because he actually apologizes after the player defeats him, having realized that his actions have brought suffering to others. Then, upon exploding into nothingness, he requests that Mario build him next time the snow falls so that they can meet again. It's actually really touching, and makes me sad that none of the other bosses have a similar appeal. His motivation makes sense. He needed the crown to continue living, but it also turned him mad, so he regrets his actions when he finally comes to. And this bit of story isn't super profound or anything, especially when compared to other character arcs in the franchise, but it does make me feel something, so I'm glad it's here. With that said, it is an exception. So with Petey Piranha, we're back to the usual formula of the crown simply granting power to a random follower of Bowser, who has nothing to really say about the situation themselves. The writers at least changed it up though by having Petey eat the royal sticker because he's somewhat of a mindless glutton. It's kind of interesting too that the spear guys were trying to placate an erupting volcano, and the sticker that could have saved them instead fell into the wrong hands, or wrong mouth, and made the situation worse. But all that's left is Bowser, and we know he's hungry for power, not just hungry for a tasty looking sticker. I'd say the only fearful part of his fight is during a fake-out, where he's knocked off of the castle and it seems that Mario's won. But the crown falls with him, so you must walk over to the edge and check. He did have a lot of HP remaining before taking the tumble, so it probably won't come as too big of a surprise that he has another form. Enormous arms made of cardboard suddenly reach up and destroy the roof, and a giant, three-dimensional Bowser pulls himself back up while a pretty rockin' fight song plays. This superpowered boss isn't invincible, like Kirsty implies, but his defense is considerably higher than usual. Even though it is possible to take him down gradually through sheer force of will, Kirsty feels the need to sacrifice herself by becoming a battle sticker Mario can use to weaken him. In my opinion, again, coming from Super Paper Mario, which had a partner character sacrifice that was very well earned, this moment just doesn't stick the landing for me. Kirsty isn't completely unlikable, but she is unnecessarily curt towards Mario for most of the adventure. And besides personality, I don't think the stakes were raised high enough to justify this. Maybe if Bowser wished for true invulnerability like he did with the Star Rod, I could see this working, because sure, it kinda makes sense that her power can match a royal sticker as she originates from the same star, but I don't know. The whole thing doesn't feel earned. It's just sort of shoehorned in there to bring some emotion to the climax without any real buildup. Choosing not to use Kirsty doesn't change the ending at all either, which is pretty lame. Something of note though is that Mario is actually able to tear off Big Bowser's arms, which doesn't look shocking to us, but is pretty brutal in the context of this papercraft world. Once the turtle's trounced, he flutters down without saying a word, and the princess is rescued. Even though this should be against the rules, Mario and the citizens of the Mushroom Kingdom wish for the wish-granting Sticker Comet's revival. They wished for more wishes. Kirsty is also brought back due to Mario's personal wish, so everything is returned the way it was without consequence. Yay, my favorite type of ending. Bowser then tries to touch the comet again, but gets yelled at by Kirsty, who makes a joke about him being a pain. He and Peach start laughing, but not Mario, as the screen zooms out like it's the Super Mario Bros. Super Show.
My only regret is that I have but one stomach to give your country.
Oh, and Sticker Star implies that Bowser Jr. died. But don't worry, he comes back in the Origami King, where he dies again, temporarily. Hey, at least there's a fun parade for the credits led by Luigi. That's it for the main story, but I did want to backtrack to talk about more of the worthy darker moments I skipped. One of them is the expected, unexpected game show Mario must participate in. This time, the host isn't a stone Bowser head, neither is it a worm in a top hat, a thwomp, or even the internet, but a sniffit for a crowd of sniffits. The winning prize is a piece of Wiggler. Yeah, it's only a little disturbing that his segments can all function perfectly detached from one another. It's also clear that once the games begin, Mario's life is on the line, which is nicer than Sniffit or Whiffit Seabed Edition in Color Splash, where Mario's only told about the risk when he answers a question wrong. I wonder if they stopped worrying about being sued, or if the court system works differently in Prism Island, because in Sticker Star, the show's lawyers advise that Mario can't technically be guaranteed survival. This way, Mario at least knows that his life's in danger going in, whereas in Color Splash, it's a surprise introduced to increase ratings. Then in the Origami King, we're back to being worried about the law. Rather than a giant urchin eventually popping Mario's only source of oxygen, or him being shot out of a cannon if he loses like in Shy Guys Finish Last, the quote-unquote hilarious poison gas is released into the room immediately to encourage fast answers. One whiff of that stuff and your HP will drop like nobody's business. Because of this, Sticker Star's game show is easily the most dangerous of the modern trilogy. While all of them lethally endanger Mario, simply playing this one is bad for his health. The entire duration of the first round has him inhaling toxic fumes. Mario's not the only unlucky participant here to make for a riveting show though, as round 2 sees him bashing the heads of unpaid Sniffit interns in time before they scurry back to their underwhelming underground lounge. Oh, and they have to be exposed to noxious gas alongside the contestant too. But to be fair, that's a moot point. Sniffits are always wearing gas masks. A special bonus round Mario has to agree to in a legally binding way takes our star to a harder stage that combines aspects of the first and second rounds, all while piping in Mario's favorite flavor of poison gas to keep him on his toes. Despite my overall dislike of Sticker Star, the game does have some moments like this that are really fun and unique. Another such segment is the Enig Mansion, which I think is the game at its best. This level takes place in a haunted estate atop a snowy mountain, giving me Luigi's Mansion 2, aka Dark Moon vibes. The steward sitting outside explains that a terrible book sealing a great evil was opened, while an unnerving, discordant version of the Ghost House track from Super Mario World plays. The Toad is so terrified of what was unleashed that he can't speak their names, and he won't re-enter the mansion. He hands over the Book of Sealing, then asks Mario to re-imprison whatever escaped and return it to the basement. The initial music, if you want to call it that, in the foyer is downright unsettling, as it's mainly just warbling noises that go quiet when entering another room. A lightning strike causes the power to briefly go out, and the terrifying demons reveal themselves. Now, get ready for this. The demons are boos. Yep, just plain old boos. And Mario's horrified, which is weird because this isn't his first haunted rodeo. A bunch of mischievous boos occupying a mansion should come as no surprise. He's dealt with naughty ones before, even in other Paper Marios, so are these reactions really warranted? I agree with Kirsty, saying they're more fun than terrifying, but when they simply look his way, Mario acts as frightened as Luigi. Gripes aside, the name of the game now is using not a poltergust, but the aforementioned Book of Sealing to trap boos, and the process is really entertaining. I love me a good haunted house level, and I feel this one is at least on par with the N64 Boo's Mansion. There's nothing too eerie here, but a jump scare I'll talk about later, plus one boo who shadows the steward, sending chills up and down his spine, and another whose face takes the place of his portrait. Once all of the boos are collected, placing the special book on a pedestal in what just might be a wine cellar, Kamek slides into the scene like a creep, revealing that he was the one who initially broke the seal, causing all of this commotion. And then, uh-oh, he does it again! This time, though, the 100 boos stuffed inside fold together into a paper model Big Boo. After the spoopy hijinks are over, Mario is invited to sit and watch the steward drink what I assume is coffee or hot chocolate, not wine, while he talks about wanting to hire a manservant of his own. Good luck with that, buddy. Another really cool idea in Sticker Star that returns in Color Splash is a battlefield of quicksand. Without any input from the player, Mario and the enemies will gradually sink into it until the former's head is buried. Of course, breathing down there is pretty impossible, so no matter how much health Mario had before suffocating in the sand, it drops to 0 for a non-standard game over. This is some great attention to detail. It's very unlikely, but I can see a player initiating the battle, putting their 3DS or Wii U gamepad down, then coming back to find a hapless Mario halfway underground flailing around desperately for help. Another instant death moment you're likely to trigger more naturally is getting eaten alive by the cheap chomp of Long Fall Falls, reviving the nightmare of my poor baby Yoshis being swallowed up one by one in Jungle Puddle from Yoshi's Story. The level opens right away to Mario riding a raft from the previous stage down the river. The area is extremely foggy at first, but before clearing up, an enormous outline appears below the water's surface that made me think of the rare whale shadow Easter egg from the GameCube Animal Crossing that has a 1% chance of spawning in the deep sea you can see without glitches when riding on Captain's boat. In Sticker Star, this monstrous silhouette appears under the raft Mario's standing on, swimming away while making a loud noise before leaping out of the water towards him. This big fish is hungry for Italian food, rushing to the front of the screen and nearly filling it entirely with its massive body. Seriously, this river is almost too small for it. The Cheap Chomp can leap into the foreground, creating a colossal splash. It can spin its tail like a propeller, and even strafe side to side before attacking to fake out the player. If Mario isn't devoured, and the raft is still intact, he and the biggin will eventually reach the river's end and fly off of a waterfall, one figuratively and the other literally. Yeah, I wasn't exaggerating when I said it can spin its tail like a propeller. It's so powerful the fish can fly through the air. This was likely done for the sake of comedy, but if I saw this creature soaring towards me, I would be making peace with my inevitable demise. It's pretty tough surviving this course once, but there are cruelly 2 branching comet pieces to retrieve here, which means you have to go through the ordeal a second time. More if you want to farm 2 of the rarest stickers in the game. And if you do replay the level, be prepared as the Cheap Chomp's speed increases, making repeat playthroughs much more difficult and terrifying. I'll take Nibbles found lurking in the bodies of water in the Thousand-Year Door to this guy. I'd also sooner take the animated fish skeletons from the Jungle Rapids stage of this game, though the river being infested with live fish bones is an unsettling thought. Never mind the cute rubber ducky. As far as Mario, I think he'd rather take Big Bertha to this Cheap Chomp too. Getting back on land, most common enemies in the modern Paper Mario trilogy can be savagely set ablaze with a fire flower or flame-based thing. which turns them into ashes. But in this one, you're actually able to use an oven thing sticker to roast them alive, reminding me of the implications of the screen turning red when Diddy and Dixie Kong lose all of their lives and are captured in Donkey Kong Country 2. Using a squirt gun thing sticker changes your perspective to first person, where you can target and blast enemies with water until they dissolve. It's far sillier than the oven, but the obvious tribute to the first-person shooter genre in a Mario game is a little shocking. In Shy Guy Jungle, the player must clean up this trash heap with either a goat or vacuum cleaner thing to progress, but before then, you can dig around in the garbage to find a ton of notes, ranging from humorous to just plain weird. One of them is an intriguing set of characters, and its purpose hasn't been discovered to this day, which is really cool. It reminds me of a time before everybody had easy access to the internet, and urban gaming playground legends thrived with few to disprove or decipher them. To have a known mystery in a Mario game left unsolved for over 10 years is impressive. XD3R B8HH 9ZR2 FL16. A friend code? That can't be the case, as those are only 12 digits. What about a used eShop or Club Nintendo key? They're the same length. Well, fans have already tried this, and instead of giving a "this code has already been used" message, it displays the one about it being a wrong code. According to Mario researcher Super Mario Broth, it is not a valid code for any Nintendo service. Or Steam, of course. My thinking is that this is a reference to eShop keys, but it never actually was a real one. The developer just put a random combination of numbers and letters together in the format. But who really knows? Potentially adding to the puzzle is another curious message consisting only of lines similarly spaced apart into 4 segments. There's 3 separate groups of lines, followed by a single pairing of 2. Game fan Dan on the Blockland forum suspected that this note could be a cipher for the serial key, and listed possible outcomes, while Fred Dakiko interpreted the pair as coordinates, leading to places in both Africa and the Philippines. Surely that midway point is where Intelligent Systems hid the prototype of Sticker Star Miyamoto claimed was too much like a port of the Thousand-Year Door. This Twitter user converted the 16-digit code into binary characters, which created this odd shape you can make of what you will, while other fans realized that if you plug in .com at the end of the code, it takes you to a website that offers another code. But the domain was apparently registered after Super Mario Broth's post, so it was likely done by a fan. In a now deleted comment within that thread, archived by Jack Frost of the Super Mario boards, she says of the popular web series Boundary Break, claimed to have been told what it really is, and stated a year later that it'd be revealed by someone who isn't him. This was most likely a joke, so please don't go asking him about it. But if you have any ideas at all of what it could be, I'd love to hear them in the comments. Let's see how deep the rabbit hole of this conspiracy can go. You may be wondering why I brought this up for Dark Aspects at all, and I think it's just because some of these gaming mysteries have this inherent creepiness to them. Maybe it's a general sense of unease about the unknown. As for information we do have available, in an Iwata Asks interview, Kensuke Tanabe and Igata discuss the creation of the Desert Tower of World 2, explaining that they wanted to create the impression of ancient ruins. They discussed putting in a mural, and started drawing Toads and Koopas that were taller than usual, giving them more human-like proportions. Tanabe thought seeing a humanoid Koopa Troopa on all fours was really creepy, and when Igata showed the design to the rest of his fellow staff members, they all agreed it was quote-unquote gross. Miyamoto surprisingly liked the art though, and asked, why don't you make it even more disgusting? Like what Kirsty had to say about the boos in this game, I think the designs are more side-splitting than spine-chilling, but I will admit the mural Goombas and Koopas following Mario's movements, then popping out of the wall was surprising. A nice callback to the original, where standard Goombas pose as posters to ambush Mario. A much more effective jump scare I alluded to earlier is found in the Enig Mansion, where an erratic stapler unexpectedly comes flying in through the window. This is absolutely a reference to the original Resident Evil, where a couple of zombie dogs break in through the glass to scare the player. This homage is made even better in retrospect after playing the Origami King, where the stapler boss is explicitly personified as a guard dog. To wrap things up, like a burrito, let's come full circle to talk about a couple of worthy moments in the game's starting area. The exchange of things being illegal and talked about as if it's synonymous to a drug deal is much more blatant in Color Splash, but I do think it started in Sticker Star, as the purple toad running the Sling-A-Thing stall will not outwardly advertise the sale of things themselves, only the service of turning them into stickers, but will whisper to Mario that even if he doesn't have any things on him to swing by and we'll talk about it. When Bowser first ravaged Decalburg, he burritoed the plaza, making transportation out of town impossible. With the help of all the surrounding toads though, they're able to unroll it again, but accidentally trap the green toad in charge of the mission underneath the entire burg in the process. You are able to rescue him upon learning the Paper Eyes ability, but you don't have to, so he can be stuck beneath the fountain indefinitely. Imagine if a player waited too long and eventually paperized here only to find a rotting toad corpse. But with that, I've said all I had to say about the dark aspects of Paper Mario Sticker Star. A lighter game in general to start the modern Paper Mario trilogy, but like the original 3, each successor does get a lot darker. And believe you me, Color Splash and the Origami King are filled to the brim with this stuff. Paper Mario Color Splash opens like many classic tales of literature, on a dark and stormy night. I'm referring to you, Donkey Kong Country Instruction Manual. On said night, a shaken-looking Peach and her toad retainer appear at Mario's doorstep. This is no jaunt, however. The princess is here for business as the bearer of bad news. To Mario's great surprise, she hands over the corpse of a paper toad that was mailed to her, completely sapped of its color, leaving nothing behind but a plain white sheet. According to a postage stamp on the back of this lifeless toad's head, the body was sent from Port Prisma, a place where Shy Guys are more common than even Goombas, who run amok wielding weapons that strike fear into the hearts of this world's wafer-thin inhabitants. Straws. These straws are said to be given to the most competent Shy Guy grunts, promoted to the title Slurp Guy, granting the ability to suck away an individual's life essence, their paint, which is established in the introduction to course through the veins of all paper people. The creepiness of this concept was not lost on the developers. In fact, the horror aspect is actually embraced. Slurp Guys are basically vampires, draining a victim of their lifeblood. Said toads will scream until the color up to their eyes is gone, and they're no longer physically able to use their vocal cords. King Ollie, main antagonist of the next game in the series who plots to commit toad genocide, would love this. Accompanying the beautiful sound of a screeching toad are psycho strings, used especially well again with the enemy's twisted cousin Shunned Guy. The internal file name for these enemies refer to them as Shy Guy Exorcists, with their unnatural ability to bend backwards very likely alluding to that film. As a side note, Masque Maudit, the French Nintendo of Europe name for this enemy, translates to Cursed Shy Guy. Maudit can also mean damned. I referred to one of these blank husks earlier as a corpse, but in actuality the state these toads are left in is closer to stasis, as they're able to be revived with Mario's hammer, imbued with the power of paint by the newly awakened Prisma Fountain Guardian, Huey. If Mario is ever defeated in battle though, a horde of Slurp Guys will come and steal the fallen protagonist's color. It implies Mario's demise, which means that without the chosen hero, each and every affected toad remaining probably won't be coming back. A talking paint can companion, a can-panion, may sound kind of lame, but he's actually a well-written character. Intelligent Systems successfully made me care about a flying paint bucket. Anyway, our two heroes must travel across Prism Island in search of the scattered big paint stars, able to produce an infinite supply of its respective color as the primary and, secondary, I guess, sources of the world's life-giving paint. They must do this while restoring toads and blank spots left by these suckers along the way. Whenever a big paint star is retrieved, the mystery of the stolen paint starts becoming much clearer. Why are the Shy Guys involved? Is it simply that they're mischievous, like in the N64 game where they terrorize Toad Town for fun? Well, yes, they are rather naughty creatures by default, but someone or some things got them riled up now. Surprise, surprise, it's Bowser, who is thankfully allowed to speak again after tragically being muted in Sticker Star. Well, the big bad is technically Bowser, but he hasn't actually done anything mean on purpose this time. You see, mixing all 6 main colors of paint in this world is considered blasphemous, and it's incredibly dangerous because doing so creates a substance known as black paint that's toxic to the touch. This hazard hurts any living being that comes into contact with it, shown firsthand when a bonsai bill rockets into Sunglow Ridge and explodes in a manner similar to an atom bomb. The missile makes impact in the faraway hills, but Mario braces himself as the shockwave reaches all the way to where he's standing. A plume of deadly smoke rises that forms the shape of a skull, so the player must rush over to investigate. Huey remarks that something smells terrible and that he's got a bad feeling, but the reality of the situation is much more dire than he had expected. The bonsai bill was carrying noxious black paint, blanketing the once lush landscape with the stuff when it landed. After Mario injures himself by trying to take a miasmic mud bath, Huey seemingly comes to terms with what he must do, and takes care of the problem in a way the player and Mario can't see. Don't worry, this plot point does come up again later. For now, you'd think that the main narrative is as follows. Somehow, Bowser learns of the black paint's potential, and because he's power hungry, he wants to weaponize it to take over Prism Island or the Mushroom Kingdom. Well, no actually, and I'm glad because that would be kind of boring. Color Splash has the silliest reason for its events transpiring, but I ultimately think that it works. When all big paint stars are collected, the final memory reveals that Bowser is just a big old doofus. He watches Toads playing around the paint fountain from high atop the Plaza Tower, like Batman, and, unlike Batman, wants in on the fun, envisioning himself with a sweet rainbow-painted shell.
So long, Bowser!
Hey, say what you will about the Koopa army, but it's nice to know their leader is an LGBTQ+ ally. Anyway, Bowser chuckles at his brilliant idea and leaps into the fountain, scaring all of the Toads shitless, good thing they're already wearing diapers, and starts spinning around rapidly, which combines all of the beautiful colors into a sludge that begins slowly creeping up his body. Should've just dipped your shell in, dude. Up until a few seconds ago, Bowser didn't know the consequences of his actions and was simply enjoying splashing around, but now he's helpless as this new black paint overtakes him, distorting his roar and apparently bestowing him with awesome power. Okay, so he accidentally got powered up, and now he wants to take this poison mistake he's concocted and use it as a weapon, as I mentioned earlier. Well, Bowser's not just tapping into the ability of black paint to aid an evil plan. He's been possessed and is doing its bidding. The black paint of this game is not just a contaminant. It's a living entity with a mind and goals of its own, similar to symbiotes of the Spider-Man universe. If you're unfamiliar, symbiotes are a species of parasitic alien life forms that can bond with a host and influence them, not unlike the goop that's taken hold of Bowser here, and the paint that creates Fury Bowser from the Switch version of Super Mario 3D World. I do think that the black paint works with its host to act on their dark desires, but like a puppet master pulling the strings, the black paint has its own ambition that takes priority, which seems to be spreading itself like a plague throughout Prism Island. The best example of this is with Peach. There's really no reason for the black paint to kidnap her, but because that's what Bowser likes to do, she's stolen away. However, under the paint's control, he eventually drains Peach of her color and frames her as a portrait in the throne room, which goes against what the real Bowser would do. That's a step too far. King Ollie's reveal of what is essentially Peach's flayed body having become part of his origami castle is far more disturbing, but there's still a creepiness to what black paint Bowser's done here. And well before it even happens, she's aware that he isn't truly himself. The penultimate boss, Roy Koopa, actually uses black paint too. After he orders a gang of slurp guys to extract all of our heroes' paint reserves, Roy loads up the separate colors into his bazooka and fires away. Apparently there are treaties Roy's breaking here that ban using a man's own paint against him. Depending on the color he coats Mario in, it causes a different status effect. Red makes him angry, for example,
speeding up all of his attack animations,
while green demotivates the plumber and
slows everything down,
creating an opposite effect. Perhaps because they're perfect contrasts on the color wheel. That or it's another dig at poor Luigi. Eventually, Roy will get tired of toying around and begin mixing all of Mario's colors to create a blackout, covering the battle arena and himself in the virulent gunk. But the atmosphere really becomes unsettling as the high-energy music fades out and then into a very slowed-down, ominous version of the track. It evokes a feeling that something is seriously very wrong. So the required capital T thing to use here is a washing machine. If that makes zero sense to you, in this game you can squeeze real-world objects called things into battle cards to summon later. Anyway, when using this washing machine, the screen is paused, rolled up, and sent through an express cycle, then spit out all squeaky clean. Sadly, this safer method of removing black paint does not work against the final boss, or in any other situation it'd be very helpful in. Like the next room, where we see how the sausage is made. Endless Shy Guys carrying buckets of stolen paint are transported via this conveyor belt through a tunnel leading to an enormous mixer, where a black paint slurry is pumped through pipes to fill bonsai bills so that our villain can literally paint the world black. That means this castle in the sky is essentially a nuclear bomb factory. In a really cool sequence of events, Mario lures a pair of ready-to-blow bombs to a nest of much larger ones, conveniently sleeping below the main tank of black paint. The little blast from the standard bombs is enough to ignite all of their bigger brethren, causing a powerful domino effect explosion that obliterates the tank, presumably wiping out all of these Shy Guys, and flooding the facility with deathly paint. The loss of this many living bombs is staggering too, but I admittedly didn't really think much about it during my first playthrough. The ordeal feels a lot different in retrospect after the sequel game, the Origami King, directly addressed the short lifespan of their species, working the idea of explosions they can't come back from into the narrative. Any Shy Guys who weren't blown apart can be seen falling into the rising lethal liquid, with plenty of enemies standing on remnants of the infrastructure that weren't entirely destroyed. If the player isn't fast enough, Mario can also be consumed by the muck for an instant game over. Barely making it out alive thanks to a warp pipe, the man in red and his partner are transported close to the throne room's entrance where the final boss awaits. There's no background music played on the way there. All that can be heard now is the sloshing sound of encroaching black paint below. The final fight itself starts out fairly basic. It's Bowser, but he's juiced up. That's been done many times before, though it's really cool here because this is where the game explicitly reveals that the Koopa King is under the control of this greater evil. Each attack inflicted by the player causes black paint to fling off of Bowser, so after a little while his head can be fully uncovered. When this happens, the air about him changes. No longer is he out for blood, but shocked that Mario's standing in front of him. "Is Princess Peach with you?" he asks before cocking his head up towards the ceiling as the paint, exuding a sinister purple aura, rolls up his body. Once it's swallowed him whole, his eyes, now glowing yellow, later red, open suddenly, as the power overwhelms him and he increases in size. The boss then, speaking as the parasite, tells Mario to ignore its host. In this form, possessed Bowser isn't invincible, but all damage to him is nullified since he's able to recall any paint that's been knocked off. With no other option, Huey finally reveals what he previously kept secret from Mario, his ability to absorb black paint. He also reverts back to his original, non-papery form so that he can be used as a human shield to block and collect the toxin. He tells us the process is painful, and that he can only withstand about 10 more attacks before it does him in for good. The wear on his tiny tin body starts to show with each onslaught, and even his expression changes from angry eyes to a look of fear, knowing that he can't make it much longer. When the black paint's had enough, it initiates a last breath attack, releasing all the rest of itself and Bowser's own paint into a single, incredibly difficult to defend against move, dealing extraordinary damage. If it isn't blocked, a ton of black paint returns to Bowser, basically resetting this phase of the fight, and poor Huey will be worse for the wear, getting increasingly bent out of shape, complete with drooping eyelids. Just as he said, it actually does get to a point where his body can't take it anymore. Unless he's just unconscious here, you can witness Huey die on screen, lids separating from his body as he collapses to the ground with Mario, and the screen fades to white for a game over. You can get lots of very interesting game overs in Color Splash actually, like not bringing the proper thing to a Koopaling fight. They don't waste your time. Iggy can crush Mario for 999 damage with an unavoidable thwomp. You can even get a couple of these non-standard game overs after defeating the final boss too. One by refusing to repaint Peach, even after Huey yells at you to do so, and another for taking too long to escape. If you put the controller down and go use the bathroom while Luigi and Peach are waiting for Mario in the getaway cart, Rainbow Road will fall and a loud crashing noise indicates that the castle did too, killing everyone. Even if you do decide that the gang should all live and get inside of the cart though, Huey opts to stay behind because once the castle implodes, a flood of black paint will come spilling out and land somewhere. He can't let that happen, because as a guardian of the Prisma Fountain, it's his destiny not just to ensure the safety of the big paint stars, but to destroy the black paint. He lies to the crew about meeting them back in town, because he knows this will destroy him too. Flying underneath the floating castle, Huey squeezes the biggest thing to ever be squeezed into a battle card, wringing out the castle itself and taking in all of the deadly poison, to then take it away, far away from Prism Island so that it can't hurt anyone again. I'm not sure where he's carrying it off to though. Is he flying out to space, dumping it in the ocean, the void, or perhaps a landfill on another continent where it's someone else's problem? I'm just kidding, of course, but I would love to see where the black paint went. Peach implies that Huey's still out there, alive, but the only way to get real confirmation of that is to 100% the game, where a post-credit scene shows Huey bouncing back into the fountain. I'm glad he's alright, but this is the second time, third if you count Tippy, that your partner character is sacrificed. I sure hope that the Origami King won't try to pull that again. All in all, I think Bowser being controlled by this substance with sentience works well, as it's a different approach to the other times he's been possessed in the Mario franchise. Although I do wish the black paint was given more screen time and lore to stand out as its own character. Most every time Black Paint Bowser speaks, we know it's mainly coming from the parasite. But the problem is, he's not given very many lines, so we can't gauge much about its personality. I'm not saying the black paint has to be as fleshed out as, say, Venom, but imagine it taking a new, independent form after leaving Bowser, like this cape from the concept art. And then Bowser gets upset that this gross creature took over his body, so he has to work with Mario to subdue it. Maybe the black paint could have possessed others. Even a lowly Shy Guy at Sunglow Ridge would have been interesting, so that it could speak to Mario earlier in the game through another vessel. I'd like to know your thoughts on black paint as the major antagonist. But with the main story pretty much covered, I want to now speak more about these lesser minions. Shy Guys and their many variants in this game mostly range on a scale from silly to scary. You've got ones that have been dunked in water for too long and become the slightly creepy color-smeared soggy guys. Black Shy Guys, who sadly have nothing to do with black paint, are ninjas. While taking over the Toad Captain's ship, this Black Shy Guy introduces himself with a haiku about how blood, paint, will soon be spilled. They require an item or thing card to best due to their mastery, innovation, probably a result of their supposed black belt training. One very special Black Shy Guy wearing a mask, on top of his mask is the distinctive Shy Bandit, with his very own music track amazingly incorporating Shy Guy vocals. Having apparently been banished from his homeland, the Shy Bandit appears randomly on the map select screen in an attempt to drain an entire area's color, even if the level has been fully restored. A calling card bearing their insignia marks the target, so if you can catch them in time, a victory in battle assures nothing will be lost. But what about the plain Shy Guys? The ones without a straw in hand. Those not coated in a layer of foil armor, with nothing special to differentiate their appearance from the rest of their clan. Well, plenty of them make up for their plainness with wisecracks and jokes. But there is one unassuming goon given a poignant backstory based around the very fact that he is a non-distinctive, run-of-the-mill red-robe Shy Guy. On the Sunset Express, speaking with the various non-hostile members of Bowser's forces makes you feel bad for them. A Koopa Troopa in the back just wants to start a family and give up this fool's life, while the aforementioned Shy Guy wants Mario to sit and chat about his real desire to travel the world, but he knows he can't because he's trapped being a slave to the Koopa army. This Shy Guy has given up on his dreams and tells Mario that they'll likely meet again, but unfortunately as enemies. It's powerful to see this side of the henchman, and makes defeating members of their race after quite the difficult task. This scene is funny and unexpected as is, but you can actually find and fight this particular Shy Guy towards the end of the game, just like he predicted. As he's defeated, but before vanishing, he'll explain that if he had to meet his end this way, he's glad it was by Mario's hand. What a heavy emotional sequence of events for a Mario game to cover. Another brutal portrayal of Shy Guy death sees Mario joining this barista Toad and physically squishing several of them as payback for wrecking his cafe. A few Shy Guys are caught under the previously rolled up path, holding it up above their heads so it doesn't flatten them. Well, jumping on top of it with Toad pops them as paint blobs spatter on the ground for Mario to absorb. It's quite surprising to see this executed for the first time. Can you imagine if these Shy Guys never turned blue? I think exploding into red paint would increase the ESRB rating for sure. While on the topic, there's also a bucket that crushes an unsuspecting Shy Guy in Plum Park, and one that ate a magma burger so spicy it turned him into a pile of ashes that can scatter like dust in the wind. This poor soul didn't even have one. He was just torched by a guy who did. Like the Sunset Express Shy Guy, 3 of the Toad Red Rescue Squad members also contemplate life's meaning while waiting in line at the Emerald Circus. The way these toads describe mortality is a bit pessimistic, and it's easy to miss because I'm sure not many players will be bothered to talk to every single toad. At the train repair shop, one toad of many will confess, "My wife left me," when they're all complaining to Mario. Their cries literally cause him pain, so if you had a low amount of health going into the quote-unquote encounter, "My wife left me" could be the last thing Mario hears before his untimely demise. Speaking of death, there are a few ghost toads in the Dark Blue Mansion stage with a touching backstory. This hotel is stuck in a time loop the player needs to fix by helping and gathering each member of a Toad Tea Party, so that they can enjoy a gathering that never happened when they were alive. This game's neat digital manual expands upon this by stating the unfulfillment of the Toad's oath caused them all deep depression, which apparently has lasted 200 years. Luckily, Mario is here now to help resolve this unfinished business by granting their wish to enjoy tea together once more, ultimately allowing them to ascend to the afterlife in peace. That was bittersweet, but let's get the eye-opening dialogue train going again, starting with one of my favorite lines in the game. After throwing Mario in a prison cell inside Mustard Cafe's Sniffit hideout, the warden states that there's not much more I can do to you without raising this game's age rating. Slap a T rating on there and you can get away with a little torture. At the harbor of Port Prisma, there's a toad that sells aforementioned things to the player. His shop is tucked away from the rest of the toads, and upon first interaction, he'll ask Mario if he's a cop. He'll then imply that his goods may or may not have been obtained legally, and once Mario starts using them, he'll be hooked and never want to stop. This sketchy exchange is most certainly the developers innocently having fun with double entendres, which crops up again in Cobalt Base, when a Sniffit shadily sells you cards you'll soon need at a premium outside of the warp pipe leading Mario and Huey to an underwater game show they're forced to participate in. Losing means death, a fact revealed to the contestant upon answering a question incorrectly. A bona fide spike-covered urchin appears above Mario's air bubble, and will inch itself closer and closer with every subsequent wrong answer until the bubble pops, leaving Mario to drown. He's playing for his life, which really helps the show's ratings. In the Golden Coliseum's arena, Mario again has to fight for his life, this time with physical violence. The plumber is pinned up against a barrage of enemies that would likely overpower him if battling normally. Though luckily this isn't a time-consuming event, as Mario's able to find a classic superstar in a nearby crate and plow through every minion. The arena's announcer will cry that Mario is cheating his way to victory using a performance-enhancing power-up. Clearly commentary on drug use in professional sports. Most likely a statement on Olympic athletes and regulation in particular. It's a massacre! Oh, it's a paint bath! Mario the war criminal emerges victorious. Lastly, we have a freaking gun control joke on the west side of Port Prisma. This toad comments that while he'd love to ban the use of straws in general because they're being used to hurt innocents, outlawing them will make it so that only outlaws have straws. This line was very shocking to me, just like the 50-second way to use a cork from the article this toad's reading. Whether or not you like playing the modern Paper Mario games, it's hard to deny that Color Splash and the Origami King have some great writing. The Origami King has worked to further this horror concept from the very beginning, with the reveal trailer as one giant homage. Becoming folded into origami itself is first presented as a sort of religious cult initiation by an enlightened Princess Peach, asking Mario to crease himself and become reborn. Whether the player agrees that all Toads should be silenced, or outright refuses her offer, she nevertheless bids Mario goodbye, speaking with broken, misaligned text that's used again for any others who have converted. Based on Nintendo of America's history of censoring religion, I was surprised to learn that, beyond the cultist undertones, worship plays a big role in the game's opening area as well. Koopa Troopa followers ask if Mario 2 is seeking Shellvation, and task him with collecting holy shells to gain access to the temple of their godlike Vellumental. It's likely just a coincidence, but the sign in front could be addressing the issue of monetary fraud, seen with corrupted, real-world churches only concerned about money, with a line, "Donate, worship, donate again." There is a heavy emphasis on spending coins here after all, seen with an auctioning peddler of a holy stone, and again with the inside museum-like tour being littered with deposit boxes. Getting back to Mario's predicament though, apparently there was always a dungeon directly under the foyer of Peach's castle, where Bowser's soldiers, and now Mario himself, are sent to be inducted. Shadows cast against the wall reveal his army being taken to be involuntarily creased. Bowser already partially transformed into a sad little paper wallet, or wet floor sign as some prefer to call it. He's shown to be dangling from the ceiling, forced to hang while watching his captured soldiers transmuting, all while helpless and being partly turned himself. It's an ordeal reminiscent of torture within the context of this papercraft world, and it's a theme prevalent with this game's major bosses. In the same Sticker Star interview as earlier, Taro Kudo mentions that for battles, the team brainstormed ways in which you could do damage to paper, like folding it, getting it wet, and burning it. They really ran with this idea for the Origami King, as real-world things introduced as helper items in the previous two games that can in turn be devastating to paper are no longer on your side. These origami crafting supplies with personalities now act as malevolent guardians of their respective streamers. Known as the Legion of Stationery, the regions and subjects that fall under their control are terrorized by their specialty, with most harboring a fixation on body horror. The scorching sandpaper desert's boss, Hole Punch, for example, is able to steal faces, leaving behind a gaping hole so that no one can hear their screams. Speaking of faces, and the lack of them, this theatrics-obsessed guardian is an effigy made from rubber bands. The devs knew it was creepy because one of the toads in the crowd during its fight can appropriately call it nightmare fuel. With its binding ability, the Elastic Entertainer forces Toads in the Big Show Theater to sit through a series of performances that place Mario's life in peril. In an old Western-style quick draw, Mario can even get shot if the player isn't fast enough for an instant game over. I laughed pretty hard when I saw this bit of concept art in the museum featuring Big M armed with a gun. I'd like to think this drawing is what was pitched to Nintendo first with no context. This multi-leveled show was one of my favorite parts of the game. A theater level in some ways giving Princess Peach Showtime a run for its money. Its themes range from a brash ballet to a West Side Story homage, which ends with the bodacious Birdo lip-smacking our non-consenting hero until his eyes turn white. But let's get back to the more serious discussion of bosses, arguably the most dangerous of all being the king of biological fear for a paper body, Scissors. The first interaction with this boss is a display of power, much like Mario and Mega Man's brutal deaths in the Ridley reveal trailer for Smash Ultimate. When Bowser Jr. charges forward to rescue his dad, the screen flashes an intense red. And in a matter of seconds, the Koopa Kid, not that one, has his body decimated with pieces falling to the ground. The build-up to actually confronting Scissors pushes boundaries too. Even if you saved all of Bowser's minions from the origami menaces like I did, the siege doesn't cease, as a new threat emerges from the shadows. Expressionless, cut-out soldiers that come in larger-than-life variants and chains of paper doll children. They're described as a set of soulless minions created by Scissors. They have no faces, no feelings, and no fear. There's even a coiled hand resembling a snake, which reaches out from its dark depths to pull Mario into battle. They all look a bit disturbing, coupled with the fact that they successfully capture Bowser's minions as offerings for their master, leaving the castle's dining hall entirely empty. And what exactly does the puppeteer do with them? While Hole Punch collecting faces is sort of macabre, its Toad victims are left constrained, but they're at least able to freely move around, except for the ones trapped in sarcophaguses or spiderwebs, of course. Scissors doesn't give its kidnappees this luxury, splicing them into parts to be repurposed, keeping them conscious but immobile. With the pieces of these shredded soldiers, Scissors constructs a new entity known as the Paper Mistake, utilizing the faces of these hapless minions who are aware of what's happening, but unwillingly stuck together as an art experiment. This boss fight is also the most intense in the game up until this point by far. Failing to dodge Scissors' final cut attack, or jumping into its blades, will utterly splice Mario in half. At 999 damage, it's instant death, a consequence that shows up again for the final boss. Even without a layer of stitched faces, the kaiju papier-mâché/paper lantern baddies are a topic in and of themselves, being conditioned with an insatiable hunger for, well, paper. The first one the player can fight is a mindless house-eating Goomba that turns its head towards the camera with dead eyes, and bits of its own self missing. The lack of free will in these ravenous beasts, and the soldiers transformed by creasing are both examples of existential fear. The process turns victims into King Ollie's puppet, as indoctrinated followers in unwavering servitude. Like the faceless toads too, they can't even scream. Throughout the game, it's believed and accepted that once Bowser's followers are folded, they can't be saved. But it's revealed later that the reason they aren't able to revert back is because they've been binded by the last Legion of Stationery, Ollie's vicious attack dog, Stapler. This boss has the most brutal defeat animation if finished off with the Thousand Arms technique, by the way. Mario grabs hold of both ends, personified as a mouth, and snaps it open. Once the fanged foe is felled, its effects are undone, like the other bosses, which theoretically gives every changed soldier back their control. But backtracking from this point reveals that folded soldiers do still exist. It's sort of a plot hole, but I suppose you could argue Bowser was only able to revert with help, and because he was always just partially turned. Before moving away from bosses, I also feel the need to mention this quote from Olivia after defeating the missile-launching Gatling gun Colored Pencils. Quote, "Aw, he was a bad guy, but his art was pretty good. Whoa, that's a real doozy to think about." Unquote. Beyond its primary meaning, this can be interpreted as having real-world connotations, like many other lines of dialogue in the series. There are quite a number of people in the fandom that think this is referring to Hitler specifically, but I think it's just a statement on the separate the art from the artist discussion that is sadly especially relevant with certain internet personalities and creators of today. Similarly, this toad talks about how streamers, as in the literal paper streamers King Ollie used to steal away Peach's castle, haven't had the best reputation lately. Again, this could have been written with a double meaning in response to internet streamers, but it might absolutely just be a coincidence. While essentially every Mario RPG explores darker topics in their own way, permanent death, as in death without playing a reverse card, is reserved for villains or friendly characters who have long since passed. Like the poignant story of Admiral Bobbery's wife, Scarlet, dying of an illness while she was out at sea. If a good character dies on screen during the adventure though, you can bet that the writers won't be committing to that sacrifice. In the original Paper Mario, the already mourned for Boo's Tubba Blubba devoured are all spit back up upon his defeat, completely unharmed. In Mario and Luigi, Partners in Time, anyone shroobified by the invading alien antagonists recover in the end by the power of baby tears. Even Super Paper Mario, the oft-cited darkest Mario game of all time, doesn't really kill off its good characters. Timpani and Blumiere cease to exist, but whether they end up in another dimension or the afterlife is up for interpretation. While this is still effective as they can't come back, other sacrificial characters in the same game like Lovebee do not retain that weight, and the overall story suffers for it a bit. When it's learned that Lovebee is actually a transformed, pure heart the heroes need to progress, she surrenders her very being to fulfill that destiny. It's sad seeing her parents lament, and this subplot brings up interesting moral questions. Were they right to bestow her life in the first place, knowing it'd be temporary? Should they have kept this a secret from her? All of this development is undone after the credits roll, where she illogically and miraculously reappears without even an attempt at explanation. Seriously, the writers make a joke and say don't worry about it. It doesn't discount the grief her mother and father felt when they thought she was gone forever, but the writing team covering up the more emotionally complicated plotlines for a happy ending undermines their takeaways. Or, another way to look at it is she is actually dead, and her soul was sent to the over there, reborn as a real NIMBY, despite her outwardly saying that she was brought back to life. Regardless, this takes us to the Origami King, and I am stunned. as this game takes that extra step and crosses the well-established line twice. In a series, no, franchise first, we actually have fallen heroes with zero ambiguity. This fuseless, amnesiac Bob-omb is a character without a unique name of his own. He prefers to be referred to by his species name, joining up with Mario fairly early on in the adventure. Olivia's constantly creating funny nicknames for him. I'll be calling him Bobby throughout the rest of this video, but ultimately, he's a mass-produced Bob-omb, just like the rest of his nameless Bob-omb-rads. So, after enjoying the scenery, getting lost in a tall field of grass, and helping Mario save Shogun Studios from an origami takeover, sometimes, a celebratory fireworks show reignites Bobby's lost memory. Reinvigorated, he decides to stick around with his newfound friends. But their quest is halted when the major antagonist, the aforementioned King Ollie, arrives and blocks the path ahead, while simultaneously attempting to murder his sister. It is then that a giant boulder falls on top of Olivia, who now has limited time to live before it crushes her completely. Now, it's easy to see where this is going narratively, but the game fakes the player out, which works in a couple of ways. First of all, everything suggests Bobby is going to have to explode here. The slow zoom in on our buddy's face, his wording, the music, but it all builds up to setting sail? Okay, they're going the comedic route then? He remembers owning something that can fix the situation on board a cruise ship he used to work on before meeting up with Mario. Maybe he has a bomb, but he is a bomb. That'd be ironic and funny, right? Or perhaps he has his missing fuse stored away to use on the boulder, with the drama played off for laughs since Nintendo wouldn't kill him off for good. The explosion can't be fatal, right? As Paper Mario fans, we're kind of conditioned to believe that Bobby will be okay. Bombette and the previously mentioned Admiral Bobbery are party members that blow themselves up all the time, assisting Mario in and out of battle with that ability. Bob-omb NPCs even do it out of celebration, claiming it's fun and doesn't hurt. Some are even clearly able to grow old and have families too. But when Bobby starts discussing the ephemeral nature of his kind, expectations loosen up. Would Nintendo really go this route? It isn't until the object is retrieved and brought back to the roadblock that suspicions are confirmed. The mood takes a dire shift as he explains that the important item they've collected is indeed a fuse. Not his own, but that of his deceased friend. After explaining his tragic backstory and wanting to change things for the better, Bobby attaches the fuse and says his goodbyes. In a frenzied panic, Mario realizes what's happening and dashes forward as the screen fades to white. He's too late. Bobby, this character we've all come to know and have grown attached to, explodes on screen with his body torn apart for everyone to see. Why did Bobby have to die with his blast though? Why can't he come back? Keeping in mind that this is now speculation, there are two real reasons behind this. The first is that the Bob-ombs of old are retconned, and intelligent systems simply change the rules on how their explosions work. But another possibility, and the one I hope is the case, is the idea that the Bob-ombs unable to recover from their explosions are inorganic. The man or Koopa-made conveyor belt Bob-ombs of Bowser's army, with the apparent unfortunate side effect of being sentient, differing from the natural, quote-unquote real Bob-ombs born into this world. This distinction can actually be supported by the older games as well. Standard enemy Bob-ombs didn't come back after their explosive attacks either. Whatever the case may be, fleeting life is a theme with all the generic Bob-ombs of this game, and even with their permission, you end up killing about 100 of them as live ammunition when controlling Bowser's airship cannon. They have all accepted and respect the prospect of living to serve their purpose. It's a sad existence, and an incredibly heavy subplot that may just be the sole positive aspect likely birthed from the dev team's unfortunate limitations on modifying Mario characters. It gave standard Bob-ombs this grim depth I can safely say I was never anticipating. Kudos to, well, Kudo. He was the event director and writer for the Origami King. Bobby's death isn't just portrayed as a noble sacrifice the characters have to quickly move on from either. Olivia asks where he is soon after the blast, and Mario has to turn away, his hat covering his face. The slow realization of what had to happen in order to save her causes Olivia to flee into the previously blocked cave alone, where Mario has to try and console her. Any attempts made after sharing a moment of silence together will fail, as she blames herself for the ordeal and can't stop crying. It's only when Bobby's spirit offers Mario advice that she'll be able to pull through. He suggests Mario try and make her laugh, and when she finally does, it's understood that Bobby would want her to push on. I think overall, there was a lot of careful consideration put into her grieving period. The music is somber and resonates throughout the mines, changing when first sitting down with Olivia and again after meeting with Bobby's apparition. Every word carries this rawness, so it's all executed respectably. Olivia and Mario suffering from the mutual loss of a friend is again not something I would have ever expected this game to explore. It should be mentioned as well that it is in these very tunnels that a collectible modeled after the box containing the fuse can be found. Too soon. Even Bobby's model references his death, stating he had plenty of gumption and explode-tuitiveness. Yep, he sure did, but was that really necessary? What honestly surprised me is the one for the huge rock Bobby sacrificed himself to destroy, which ends by reading, "R.I.P. in pieces, sweet Babam." Thanks for reminding us that his body was blown apart, Nintendo. What hurts even more though is going back afterwards to have pictures taken at the now fully functioning Shogun Studios, as Bobby's ghost will join in on the last photo. I actually didn't think to backtrack and get pictures of the game while he's still alive, so I missed the opportunity to share these moments together. I will definitely be playing through the game a second time. But that's the bulk of it. I wanted to focus mainly on Bobby's story and the tragic fate of Factory Babams, but there's still one more round of kudos to give in committing to sacrifice with Olivia herself. And it's actually earned this time. At the end of the game, it's revealed that King Ollie hasn't been sitting idly in the time Mario and Olivia took to get here. He's been busy crafting 999 paper cranes, with plans to fold Mario into the 1000th so that his wish to eradicate all toads will be granted. Okay, incorporating classic Japanese folklore about origami into a game centered around origami is admittedly ingenious. And there's actually even more of it during this climax, like one phase of his fight directly inspired by kami-sumo, or paper wrestling. From trying to murder his own sister to indirectly killing Bobby. From transforming most of Bowser's army, resulting in countless deaths for those who couldn't be saved, to integrating a creased Princess Peach as a permanent part of his origami castle. All of Ollie's evil deeds are the result of his Toad creator defiling him with a permanent marker. In a fit of pride, Ollie took this as the greatest form of disrespect, and waged war on an entire race because of it. Sure, it seems silly, but to him, it's a hideous scar of his negligence and disregard for origami. Just what did his Toad creator write, though? An innocent message wishing for him to be a good king. This cold, ruthless ruler hell-bent on Toad genocide did what he did because he couldn't look into a mirror. No, that's not true. The mark is only visible when he's nearing death and all crumpled up, since it's written on an inside fold. And I doubt he would have, as an origami person, risked creasing himself to see what was scribbled, so it gets a pass. The repercussions of his deeds is another aspect that does deserve praise, as it crosses that line Color Splash came so close to. Using her brother's now lifeless paper body to fold the 1000th crane, Olivia wishes for all the origami folded by Ollie to be undone. This means that Olivia too will cease to exist, as it was revealed earlier that she was actually given life by Ollie. I guess in that sense, technically, he's her father? But after these replicas modeled after the two appear if you've completed the game 100%, they're exactly that, lifeless replicas. Olivia isn't implied to have survived somehow, like Mario's partner Huey in the aforementioned Color Splash. I feel that maybe Olivia could have reworded her wish so she didn't have to die, but who knows. She was surely twisted up inside, and perhaps felt like it was time to join her brother. I wish the ending plot twists were better established, but regardless, her sacrifice is felt deeply. It isn't left open-ended. Olivia has passed on, and that's sad. How were these once standard sheets of paper given consciousness in the first place, though? That would be the fold of life technique used by the origami craftsman that gave Ollie sentience, which was then used by Ollie to create Olivia, a fact that supposedly defies the natural order. This taboo ability to breathe life into something inanimate, and then for that once inanimate object to create more life is a terrifying thought. It's yet another level of existential terror this game is so fond of. Like old Grandsappy being logged by toads at the beginning of the game, and all of the chopped wood from the living trees of the Whispering Woods becoming reborn as whatever they're made into. A lot of them just want to burn. Okay, all of the main plot points have been touched upon, so this segment of the video will serve as a bonus, a Dark Aspects mini, or DAM if you will. It stands for damn, that's a lot of dark aspects. Another thing I've got to bring to light, darkness, is a handful of very special game over sequences that have our hero dying unconventionally, as is tradition with this series. While Mario sadly can't join Ollie's side early on and become a folded soldier, he can fail at the sudden deathmatch of a game show and get blasted out of a cannon. There's also this very shady guessing game run by a straight-faced Sniffit, where losing means eternal entrapment in a magic lamp. Luigi lost this game too, so with both brothers imprisoned inside, they'd be in here until some other hero saves them, potentially forever. A self-inflicted game over sees Mario profusely hammering the boat that's keeping everybody from falling into the ravenous rapids, which is funny to think about. But an actual scary death comes from a rabid paper macho chain chomp loose in the forest area. Taking the wrong path or not getting away fast enough can call for an instant game over. And it isn't generic. A horrified Mario is presumably torn apart, vicious sound effects and all. One major character who has had to face retribution is Captain Toad, captured and imprisoned in a block of ice by King Shroomsis for stealing Shangri-Spa's submarine. The captain's bio reiterates a freaky fate of being frozen for all of eternity, which could have been the case had he not been discovered. This last topic of today though comes from commenter Matthew, reminding me that in the very beginning of the game, Olivia had said something rather morbid. After addressing the sadness of minions transformed into folded soldiers who must be battled and cannot be saved, she reacts to their exploding into confetti by comparing it to a party, making the best out of a bad situation. Hey, we have to fight them, but at least it looks cool when they go out with a bang.